Hi, it's Mountain Jay from Tell Your Trail,
Hey.
and today we're having our fourth interview with Ryan. We're going to talk about his year 2020, which was a very weird year, but he still managed to get out quite a lot of miles. And the most significant trail was the Great Divide Trail in Canada, which he did together with his partner Magpie. And yeah, they had to battle hypothermia, even though they said the trail was awesome. It didn't come without its challenges. So yeah, you're definitely in for a treat.
Definitely. So if you enjoy the interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to keep up to date. And enjoy.
Yes, see ya.
Bye. Yeah.
Hey Ryan,
Hey,
it's good to have you back on again.
yeah, guys.
This is part four already.
Yeah, yeah. Happy New Year, guys. I'm excited to be back on. It's we're getting in that window here, and I've really loved these. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, happy New Year to you
Happy
too.
New Year.
And yeah, we've touched upon a lot of trails starting in 2016, finished up in 2019 last time around, and then yeah, 2020 hit.
Yep.
Big plans, and then COVID came around, and suddenly things changed. Um, you still managed to do some trails, which is pretty
still
awesome.
four.
Still four, yeah. You did a lot of miles.
Yeah.
um, what were your initial plans, and how did it turn out to be different?
Yeah. So 2020, it was kind of just flying by the seat of your pants at one point, but I had planned 2020 down to every single day. So it's impossible to plan the exact miles on a trail every single day, but I gave myself a block of a month time for this trail and then let the miles figure themselves out here. And
Mhm.
then I had 2 days of travel to get to the next trail. So I had 5 trail systems planned for 2020. So I was going to start off on the trail that I did, the Natchez Trace trail, and I was going to let that trail kind of break me in, set a speed record on that trail. And then I was going to transition to 2 other trails. These are actually 2 trails that I still haven't released the information of the ones I'm going to do yet, but I've pushed them into 2021. But I was supposed to do them last year, but with the world as it was, it wasn't safe. It wasn't the right choice. It wasn't responsible to do those because they were longer and I would have to interact more with communities. I felt fine doing the Natchez because with how long that was, I didn't have to interact with anybody. I mean, it was road walk pretty much, just me out there in the wilderness or road. So I didn't have to interact, and it was the right call. And I still struggled with the build up to even do the Natchez Trace. I kept pushing it back, being like, when is it going to be safe? When is it going to be the right call to do? And it started to get to the point that the world was starting to get to the point like if you're outside responsibly, you should be able to do it. So it was still an internal struggle to get there, but the planning after the Natchez and then the 2 other ones that I wasn't able to do last year, then we were going to go, I was going to meet Magpie in Canada and do the GDT. So we were able to keep that plan. But even in that plan, there's a whole story around getting to Canada.
Yeah.
And then after the GDT, we actually had PCT permits, Pacific Crest Trail, and we were going to go southbound. We both had gone northbound, but we wanted to experience the culture and the community southbound. And we also really love that trail. It's one of our favorite trails. So it was going to be a big year. I mean, it was going to be, if you added all those miles up, a little over 5,000 miles. And like I said, to do that, we planned every intermittent like travel thing between those trails to the day. So like we're like, okay, we're gonna finish this one April 15th. We have until April 17th to set foot on this terminus. So our plans were very dialed in. And then 2020 happened and those plans straight out the window.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that must have been a bit challenging. So you said you
Yeah,
had to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it was challenging, but everybody had plans. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just something we had to accept along the way. I mean, everybody had to shift. Our plans aren't the most important. People have way more important plans that they had to shift. So it was frustrating, but we accepted it.
Yeah. And how long did you eventually um, push the hiking season out until you started the Natchez?
So I pushed it out about 2 months. So I wanted to start in March, like March 1st, and that's when really everything started flaring up, and pushed it to April, and then kind of lockdowns started happening all across the country. And I'm like, well, not only is it the irresponsible thing to do, but also even to get to like Mississippi, where the Natchez Trace Trail starts, was one of the states that took the longest to lock down. But to get to that state, you would have to drive through lockdown states. So you still can't do that. So pushed it back again until May. And in May, the first round of lockdowns was starting to lift a little bit. They were starting to give a little more leeway to what you were allowed to do. And I gave it about 2 more weeks from there, because I could only push it back so far, because also I was juggling getting into Canada.
Yeah.
Because I was supposed to. So, okay, I got a little ahead. So the story behind it was March is when the border shut down in Canada, and Magpie and I, with what was going on, and we didn't know where this pandemic was going, we're like, as soon as the border opens up, I'm going to be on a plane, get to Canada, because we don't know when that border is going to shut down or open back up or what's going to go on. So it shut down very quickly and we missed that window. But we had in the plan, it's like, as soon as there's any leeway to get across that border, we'll get across that border, because we needed and wanted it to be together.
Yeah.
So our goal was May 22nd. We had done the research, done the prep. So I wanted to get the Natchez Trace in before May 22nd. So I started May 13th and finished the Natchez Trace and was on a plane 2 days after that.
Wow.
Okay.
So kept pushing, juggling. I mean, it was just all types of stuff.
So before we talk after what happened after the Natchez Trail, just before we went live, you mentioned that mentally it pushed you into realms you've never been before. Can you go into that a bit more?
Yeah. So when I say realms I've never been in before, like I've seen snippets of it. So I wrote an article on this, and I think I was able to express the feelings around it pretty well. I called it the pain well. So a lot of ultra marathoners or ultra runners or extreme activity seekers find this place when they're pushing their body physically past a breaking point that they call the pain cave, pain. I don't know if they've called it the pain well. Pain well. There's different terms for it. So it's a place inside of you that you have to accept that you're going to be in consistent pain, because there's no way out of it. So why the Natchez Trace? It was mostly road walk, like 95% road walk, and it's still a national scenic trail. But why it was so hard is because by far one of the toughest trails I've ever did, because I started off gung-ho, did about 27 miles the first day, even cut back, but I didn't break. So I took no breaks throughout the day because I was ready to hike. I was just so happy. And I got into camp noticing little something wrong with my right foot. And I'm just like, okay, it's soreness from trail. It's going to get its way worked out. So I go to sleep and I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I try to step out of the tent, and it feels like my foot is fractured, like in 1,000 places. It is really, really extremely painful. I don't even want to put one footstep outside of the tent, let alone go hike another 400 miles. So I'm like, okay, hopefully that's just my sleeping brain. Hopefully it gets better in the morning. So go to sleep. And that first morning, officially being on trail, packing up took me 20 to 30 minutes because I was having to limp around a little 5-foot tent. And I had no idea how. I knew I was going to do it. I just had no idea how. So I really thought that was the first time on any trail system that I thought, I'm like, physically my body's just going to break down and I'm not going to be able to do it. So I thought my foot was fractured. It was really that bad. And it probably was plantar fasciitis. If it's a lot of runners get this throughout the time, and it's probably from the road walk. But I mean, on the Natchez, it literally, each morning it would take me 15 to 20 miles to start going to a comfortable pace I was fine with. And that's just because the foot started to get loosened up. But those 15 to 20 miles, I mean, on the Natchez, the way it's situated is there's these little turnouts that you can see information boards, and they're about 5 foot off the route. But the pain was so extreme that sometimes those 5 feet to that board, I'm like, I just don't have those 5 feet extra in me. If it's not trail miles that I have to go down and do, I I'll break down if I do those 5 extra feet. Like, and then I had to do 35 more miles to keep to my pace that day. So it was finding a mentality that accepting that pain and just living in that pain every single moment and trying to find a way. You're not going to break through it. You just have to be in it. So it was very, very tough.
Yeah, for sure. It's not something that you make worse by straining it every day.
I'm a stubborn hiker. So I did not want to go back to Mississippi because with the schedule that I've set for myself, it would be very hard to juggle that back in there. Not the miles themselves, because it's 440 miles, can do that quickly. It's juggling the to and from trail and all of that stuff. So you do make it worse when you strain it every single day. But I didn't. For me personally, you always have an option. I don't want to express this to any other hikers that you don't have an option to quit and treat your body right and make sure you don't do lasting damage, because that is smart to do. And I had that thought in the back of my mind. I'm like, if this is something that will actually last and take me out of commission for multiple years and be a lifelong injury, and I know my body well enough to know once I hit that level, like this is going to be past a realm that mentally or physically I can push through, and it's going to be a bad injury. So I just chose to stubbornly sink into the feeling of it and just keep going, because it felt like it was at that point before, but I knew internally that it was something that my body could work through. It was just an extreme amount of pain. So it's hard to describe the mentality within that. And I think I did a good job in the article, but it's very difficult to describe a mentality around every single footstep being like wincing in pain and not knowing how that next footstep's going to come, and not wanting to take 5 extra feet off the trail because that 5 extra feet's not going towards something that's 5 extra more you're going to have to do that day, which one footstep is breaking you down. So it's hard, very hard to describe that mentality.
I can imagine. Did that have an impact on, or a positive impact then, on the trails you did afterwards? Do you feel mentally stronger and less affected by pains or things like that?
So also within that same article, I've realized pain well, at least the way I describe it, is something that now know it's there. Now you know the journey towards it, but it's not something that you dig down once and you already have that strength there to reach it every single day. You have to keep digging past it. So it's comforting knowing the journey there and knowing that that you're inside the pain well, but you're still gonna have to go through that mental pain each day. You're still gonna have to go through that physical pain each day. And this is only, again, the pain well is only in extreme instances. It's not everyday hiking. It's not, we didn't find it on the AT, we didn't find it on the PCT, we didn't find it on the CDT. And like we would see little glimmers like in extreme weather and extreme fatigue sometimes, but we never got like really deep into it. So it's an extreme, it's when you push your body and mind to an extreme limit. So it's not easier. It's more comforting knowing the way there and knowing the entrance, but you're gonna have to keep digging and digging and digging. So it's there. And also we've had a joke from 2019. A lot of the buddies we hiked with, that, do you guys know who David Goggins is by chance?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one, we always, excuse me.
He was an ex-Marine.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a ex Navy SEAL, and he's come out with a book, and he's a very intense person, and we don't necessarily completely agree with his intensity because it's extremely intense, but we pick and choose what we take from it. And he actually ran for 6 months on broken shins, and so we always compared about it. It's like, oh, you know what, David Goggins, he would have just been flying through this trail, so we can't complain. And we always say, who's going to carry the boats, because that was one of his mentalities as well. So you got to find something lighthearted enough to joke about while you're in it. And yeah, that's why we brought up him.
And did you, like, how long did you take to recover after the trail?
I guess my recover was my quarantine once I got to Canada. So as soon as I finished the trail, I stayed at an Airbnb for a few days to get ready for the flight to Canada. And I was limping around that Airbnb, like getting down the stairs and up the stairs. It took me like 10 minutes. And the last day on the Natchez, I pushed 41 miles just because I wanted to, again, test my mentality. I'm a weird hiker. So again, I wanted to test it. I'm like, okay, you know what? I could do my 35, wake up early next morning and finish, or you know what? I'm gonna push 41 and see if I can finish it at this time frame. And I pushed it, and there's levels too. So eventually your body and mind inside, I don't want to talk on the pain well too much, but eventually your body and mind inside of there realizes that that is just reality. And once it realizes it's just that reality, the pain doesn't go away, but you're able to continue to push and continue to push harder inside of that, if that makes sense, inside of that pain to reach the goal. So took a couple days to recover, and then once got to Canada, used our 2 weeks of quarantine up there to kind of fully recover.
Okay.
And you said you were gonna do a speed record.
Yep, I did.
You did.
I did.
Okay.
Still, yeah. So I did the Natchez Trace in, I don't remember the exact hours, but it was like 13 days and some type of hours on that. So one day I couldn't ignore the pain in the beginning, and I took a small Nero, like 10 miles, and that kind of messed my average up a little bit. But besides that, I was doing over 35s every day. Not the fastest, but since the Natchez Trace Trail doesn't grab a lot of enthusiasm because it's mostly a road walk, it was still able to set a speed record. So I still did. I wanted to go faster. I wanted to do it in 10 days originally, which would be 44 miles a day, but I was just breaking the threshold to even keep 35s, 36. So still able to, not the way I wanted to, but like 2020, it's not the way you want to, but it's the way that it happens.
Doesn't go the way you planned. So
was that also the reason why you picked this trail specifically, because you thought you could set a speed record on it?
No, it ties into the 2021 goal that we kind of been talking about, hinting about. It was a national scenic trail, so I kind of want to do all the national scenic trails, and it being a national scenic trail, that's not, it's a different type of beauty. It's not as scenic as the Pacific Northwest Trail, so it's not as, you're on a byway or highway for most of the time, and people don't know that you should be walking. Like, we got stopped by park rangers because it's all a quarter of a U.S. national park, so we got stopped by park rangers all the time just talking, but they were the friendliest. They're like, we've never seen people do this. I'm like, yeah, we're a special bunch here. So it's a national scenic trail, so it was kind of on our list. And then in our research, we're like, oh, we could also see how fast we could go.
So then came the Great Divide in Canada.
Yes. Whew. Another thing. I've tried to describe this one so many times. Just the journey to get to the GDT was a lot. I mean, me being an American citizen, to get into Canada during the time of COVID, they're not letting you in. So I sat in a purgatory of a checkpoint with Border Patrol, where everybody in this room got turned around on their plane and said, you're going home. And I went up to the border guard once, and he's like, okay, as soon as I got there, he's like, okay, we're putting you on a plane back. You can't come in. And I put out like a book of paperwork. I'm like, wait, let me show you these reasons here. So he's like, okay, I'll check with my supervisor. He went back, checked with the supervisor, came back. He's like, nope, you're still going home. And I'm like, well, let me go into this page and show you why it's actually a necessity to get across the border and be with my partner in this time. And he's like, okay, check with the supervisor again. So he went back and forth like 5 or 6 times. And every single time you could see in his eyes that there was like, he was starting to become more friendly. And there was like, the eyes were starting to like understand that we weren't somebody that was just trying to get into Canada. We had done our research. Our partner was there. We weren't able to fall in a specific realm because we had been partners on trail for most of our relationship instead of sharing a communal home. So every time we went back, there was more understanding. So eventually we got through purgatory, and we had been in there for 2 hours, and the contrast. So like we stepped through the door, and there's a welcome to Canada like group of people that meet you, and they're all like, welcome to Canada. And we're like, oh man, this is a completely different thing than where we just were.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They're like, oh, finally someone.
Well, so they asked me my flight number, and they type it into their little reservation thing, and they're like, oh wow, you've been in there for a while. You could tell in their eyes, they're like, he shouldn't have been able to get through. Like if he was in there that long, I'm surprised they didn't turn him around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can imagine it was a relief when you were finally in Canada with Magpie and being able to plan from there.
It was, I mean, it was a very worrisome time in the world. So like with everything going on, we had no idea how people, let alone countries, were gonna react to this. And being with your life partner in this point it's reassuring. I mean, of course you want to be with them in any given time at all, but especially during a pandemic, it's something that it was necessary for both of us. So we got there. Make a long story short, we got there. We quarantined because as soon as you get across, you have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
And within that quarantine, we started planning the GDT. And about a few days outside of quarantine, we started the road trip out to the GDT. And planning the GDT in COVID year was also a fun, fun opportunity.
Walk us through that.
Yeah, so the permits, national parks, the GDT's permits are weird since you're walking British Columbia and Alberta's border.
Yeah.
You bounce in between national parks all the time. So the permits are super hard logistic wise in a regular year to get, but we went out to trail, and the first 2 weeks about, you can get through the first national park quickly, but then after that, you're pretty much on Queensland. So the national park system actually didn't open up for reservations until June 24th. And we're like, you know what? We're going to hike the first 2 weeks on Queensland because we didn't need permits for that. And we're going to hope we got a Garmin GPS. We're going to hope we designated Magpie's parents as like the go-to people for permits, which was awesome. Thank you guys if you are watching this. So we're like, okay, June 24th hits. Let's see if we can get the permits. And we were able to get the permits, and our schedule. You can also build a schedule on the GDT to spend 18 to 20 days in national parks. Or if you do the pace and the camp spot right, the mileage, you can spend 4 or 5 days. It depends on, because sometimes you could be in a national park for 25 miles and then there's a camp spot like 1 mile off that you can go to not have to get those permits. So the permits were a juggle. We didn't know if we were going to be able to continue. We thought maybe we might have 2 weeks of hiking, and then it's almost all national park northbound after that until you hit the Kakwa region. So we thought, you know what, we're going to just hike, and if we can't, we were still able to experience some hiking in a crazy year anyway. So we just went out there and hoped for the best, and we got the best permits, not the best weather. It was, we got some best, but also extreme weather system that neither one of us had ever experienced.
Yeah. How did that look like, the weather?
Whew, okay, ready for another one? You ready for another? I'm gonna try to make it short here. So trying to describe this, because we've talked about this a lot with other hikers, with interviews outside of the hiking community. We've talked about with friends, family, trying to describe what the GDT was this year and the amount of unlucky we were in weather is hard to define. So like even other hikers don't necessarily get it. They get the extremeness of rain, they get the extremeness of weather, but literally record rain followed us for 37 days on that trail. Like we were in storm clouds almost every single day. And it's not so much the rain, it's that you can never dry out your gear. Like we didn't even have patches of sun to dry out our gear at all. So we were always soaked. And then on top of that, you're walking through snow. On top of that, you're fording these giant rivers. On top of that, you're walking through bushwhack that throws buckets of water onto you again. So we were always not only dangerously cold, but dangerously wet. And there's a difference between uncomfortable wet and danger wet. And we were always on the threshold of danger wet. And it led to hypothermia a few times, just purely because we would get caught in inversions as well. So the valleys we would go through were not warmer than the mountaintops that we had to scale up to. The weather would come down and sit. And there was one valley, about a week after we had an especially scary hypothermia moment. I think it was the Moose River Valley. And it was starting to show signs that this was the same as the previous place we had gotten a bad bout of it. And it's like, if we don't get out of this valley, like we can't stop, like we're shaking, we're frozen, like our bodies and minds need to stop right now. But if we get stuck in this valley, we don't know how long we're going to get stuck in this valley for. So it, again, it was a new mentality. Having to dig to the point of pushing through, and like as soon as you stumbled. As soon as you stepped out of the tent, you were already exhausted. You were like, okay, I am already soaking wet again because nothing dried. I'm already frozen again because it's a hypothermic summer. So almost every day, that's what it was. And it was, even trying to describe that to other hikers, like the realm of wrapping the mind around that. It's not just because people wrap their mind around like, yeah, rain sucks.
Yes.
Being wet sucks, but you pair that every single day with extreme cold and extreme mountaintops and extreme river valleys that you're fording through and bushwhacks, and it's a world unto itself. So it was a journey. It was a journey.
What do you think mentally got you through then?
It was each other. We relied a lot on each other. Magpie was a giant boost. We had to find humor in the day, and sometimes when we were even looking for humor in the day, we were so exhausted and so physically beat that humor wouldn't land. We would try to joke, and no, it wasn't happening. But still being together, I can't possibly imagine doing that trail alone. At least in those conditions. In a regular year, if you're hiking it alone, it could be fine. But in those conditions, not to have somebody to rely on and be safe with, it would be one of the scariest things that we would have ever done. We would tie rope around each other to go through these rivers. Magpie got swept away by a few rivers that actually, this is a good story. Do you want me to go into a river story?
Yeah, sure.
So we were so exhausted, and we hit Kakwa Cabin, which is the GDT terminus, northern terminus. But still, to get out, you had to do 60 miles of dirt road walk to even get to some semblance of road. So you hit the terminus, but you still had miles.
Yeah.
And this dirt road, with the flooding that was going on this year, was no longer a dirt road. The river literally ate into the road. So the next 60 miles again became a swim instead of a hike. And it was brutal. So we had one last big ford. So even though we were fording the river on the road itself, there was one last ford in front of us called Buchanan Creek. And Buchanan Creek, in the notes, said a few years ago, the bridge had been completely washed out. So being in flood levels, we're like, this one's going to be dangerous. And this is kind of the one that kept us, the last one before, that kept us from wilderness to being able to get out to civilization. And at this point, we'd been on trail in that section for 10 days. We're running out of food. I think I had a protein bar a day for the last 3 days. Like we had no food left. Like we had to get out of there. So we hit Buchanan Creek around 6. It'd been raining on us all day. We were already soaked. So what's another dip? But we were scouting out the river, and the rapids were really, really strong in this river, and they hit a bend and then kind of dropped. So you couldn't get too far. You couldn't let the movement, you couldn't swim it, because if you swam it, you can hit those rapids and hit the drop, and who knew where you're going to go from there. So our plan was to cut upriver, and then there was this tree that was kind of sticking out on the other bank, and we were to aim for the tree, like hope the rapids would push us into the tree and then pull ourselves back up to safety. So Usually I go first in rivers because I'm more comfortable around water. Magpie's more comfortable with the high alpine travel. So we both have our strengths and weaknesses, and they balance each other out really well. But so she was just done for the day. She'd been done for a while. So she's like, you know what? I'm like, Magpie, I'll go first and we'll kind of help you through it. And she's like, no, you know what? I'm going. So she went, and that tree, instead of hitting it in the middle where the rapids were not funneling as heavily, she hit it at the very tail end. So I'm standing there for what felt a few minutes, could have been a couple seconds, but she wasn't pulling herself up. And that was our plan, to pull ourselves up the tree and get to safety. And then she starts mouthing the word help. I can't hear her over the rapids, but she's mouthing the word help. So instead of being able to pick my route, I had to run into the river and hope the rapids would put me in some place that I could help her out instead of sweeping me away too.
Yeah.
So I got really lucky, and the rapids put me on the tree like here if she was down here. So I was able to I kind of shimmied my way down, and I was able to create a water funnel because the water was trapping her on that branch. They were so heavy around that turn that the water was trapping her. So by putting my pack and my body in front of her, I was able to create a funnel that it opened up that pocket that she was able to pull herself out of. And it was kind of like one last thing from the GDT that said, hope you remember us.
Yeah.
So we got out of that safely. And yeah, that's the GDT in a nutshell, at least that this year.
Wow, gosh.
Did you see anything like nice views, and was it in that sense worth it, or was it just gray clouds, barely any views?
So we coined a term for it. It was the triple B, brutally beautiful baby, because it was brutal, it was beautiful, and it made us like babies. So yeah, we saw epic stuff. That trail, just beautiful views. So even within the clouds and the cloud cover, you can still see beautiful landscapes. You're still walking through epic stuff. We want to do it again. Even with everything that happened kind of wrong this year, we still want to do it again because there was a hiker that was behind us by about a week, and all he had was sunshine because the weather system moved with us. So yeah, that hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
Can imagine.
but being able to get out of the mentality of survival into enjoyment, it would be a different trail experience.
Yeah,
And
sure, I can imagine.
in a given year, that trail is going to be physically demanding because it's really oriented to a wilderness type aspect. But in a high snow year, in a record rain year, and bad weather coming at us the entire time, it was not just physically demanding, it was always bordering on fight or flight mode. Like our bodies, after that, it took about a month for Magpie's body to recover. I mean, the amount of adrenaline that surged through every single second of that trail just to function.
Yeah.
It felt like we had compressed a hiking season of 8,000 miles into 700 miles. Like it drained everything out of us. So it was I'm tired even talking about it.
You still had two more trails coming up in that
Yes.
same year. So how long did you take to recover between that trail and then Vancouver Island?
Again, we've talked about this. My body's weird. I thrive on being malnourished and just like my body's super weird. So it took me about a week. We did eat about 4 dozen donuts in about 48 hours as soon as we got off that trail.
Oh, wow.
we were starving. Like the last 10 days should have taken us 6, and we packed out food for 6 days instead of 10 days.
Yeah.
So we were already emaciated near the end, and we weren't eating like anything by the end of that trail, like maybe one power bar an entire day. So yeah, we were starving. Magpie took a little bit longer to recover physically. It took her all hiking season to recover mentally. We did another trail together, but the mentality, it just had burned so much of like having to hold, like your brain had to be in like a fist of just clenched emotions and clenched, like just being able to push through that it just took so much that it still took a long time to release that tension out of there. So yeah, we did other trails, but the recovery process was was ongoing. Even on the Vancouver Island Trail, we would do bushwhacks or something because it's a lesser known trail.
Hmm.
And usually a bushwhack is going to be physically and mentally demanding because that's what it is. But we were realizing within 5 minutes, like our patience and our mentality and our fortitude for that was getting drained so much faster. Like all of a sudden, it's just like, I want to get out of this bushwhack. I'm done with this bushwhack. I have no more patience for this bushwhack. So it was an ongoing recovery process. It probably still is ongoing, actually. I mean, that trail's going to stick with us for a while.
Were you both able to enjoy the Vancouver Island Trail?
If you ask me this question, I'm going to say yes. If you ask Magpie this question, he's going to say no. Um, in ways, any trail system you do, you're going to have days that you enjoy, days that you don't.
Yes.
It's just the blend of those from how we hiked before were a little more shifting to the tougher days mentally. And you're still able to find moments within those days that you really enjoyed, but the scope of the day was you were already in a tough mental spot. Um, Magpie wanted to quit from Port Alberni, which was the second trail town. And she's a stubborn hiker like me. Magpie, if you're watching this, you know this as well. So we joke about our stubbornness all the time, but she was mentally exhausted. I was mentally exhausted, but we had started something, and our mentality around if we start something, we're gonna finish it, especially when it goes towards trails. So it was a long journey, but it was still beautiful.
Perfect. I was just wondering because you said it's you had some bouts of sorry, I lost the word on the GDT, the hypothermia.
Hypothermia. Mhm.
So do you have any medical training, any first aid training?
So actually, before I got into hiking, I was a rescue diver for scuba diving. So I've been CPR and first aid certified. Um, wouldn't really necessarily Hypothermia is a special case, especially in that type of environment. There's not much you can do where we were when we were getting hypothermia, because even setting up camp, everything was wet. So there's not much you can do. You have to be safe. Like when we got our most extreme bout, snow melt was starting to feel warm to me, and like my body was completely shutting down. And we ended up setting up emergency camp, and it was still raining on us, still soaking wet. And it took me 5 minutes to unbuckle the top buckle of my pack because my muscles weren't responding to me. And so we got in the tent, but everything was soaked, and my body had been past the point of even shivering. It was so cold. Like snow was feeling extremely warm to me. Confusion was setting in, all of that. So when we got into the tent, we shared body heat for 2 hours underneath two sleeping bags. And then only then was my body able to register any type of heat. And after 2 hours, I had about another 2 hours of the most violent like shakes through my entire body as it was re-warming itself.
Yeah.
So the training behind it, that's kind of the first times that we played with the idea that if it gets worse, might have to hit the emergency beacon. Try to avoid that at all. We try to avoid that at all costs, but with hypothermia, you don't want it to get past a certain level, because at that point you actually need medical treatment. And we pushed the bounds of that, and that's not smart to do. We don't recommend doing that at all. But our hiking style was, we had pushed through uncomfort before, but now it was uncomfort and danger coupled together with each other. And our mind was in hypothermia, your mind starts to deteriorate and get confused. So Magpie and I, she was doing a little bit better. She was still hypothermic as well, but we both were able to rationalize that it's getting to that level that there would be no return. So we have to set up camp, even if it's not going to be warmer, even if we're going to be stuck here for days, that we're going to have to do this. So medical training can go into it, but hypothermia is it's a scary beast. It's not something that you slap a band-aid on and get away with. It's a scary, not disease, but it's a scary beast.
Scary thing, yeah.
And more in general, would you recommend for any true hiker to have at least a first aid training?
Like general first aid training?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend it. again, it's contextual around the trail you do.
Mm.
On the GDT, yeah, definitely on the GDT. On the AT, not so much. If you get hurt, most likely somebody's going to be by in about 5 to 10 minutes on that trail that if they don't know, somebody else is going to be by in 5 or 10 minutes. So on the GDT, yeah, because you are the only people out there. You have to rely on yourself as well as your hiking partner, and vice versa. They rely on you. So yeah, it's contextual around the trail. But if you're going to go out and do more wilderness themed trails, I would recommend taking some type of courses, some type of first aid. There's specific wilderness first aid,
Yes.
something that gives you general knowledge to
Yeah.
not fix the problem necessarily, but make it safe enough to be able to get to somewhere where you can fix it.
Yeah.
And probably recognize it as well, because
Yeah.
with your background, you probably recognize hypothermia quicker than us, for example, not having any experience, not having any knowledge about
Not
it.
that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would I mean, I was hypothermic on that trail. There were 15 days that I was varying stages of hypothermic, and not all of them were as intense as that one I just described, but there were mild cases. And it wasn't the wrong gear. It was just bad luck. And yeah, we recognize it within ourselves. Like the mild cases, you're really able to recognize well, sluggish, your brain's not firing as quickly. Once we stop making jokes on trail, there's something wrong with us. So when we realize that in ourselves, we're like, okay, we're not even like if Magpie was in front of us, it's like we're not even joking to the trees right now. So something's wrong with us right here. So yeah, we recognize it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 2020.
Oh,
Yep.
whew, yeah, 2020. I mean, it just was. I have no words for 2020. Nobody has any words for 2020. It's just, what is 2020? We're in 2021 now. It's in the past. It's in the past.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's close off 2020. You did that with the Sea to Sky. Also one of the lesser known, lesser mapped trails.
Yep.
How was your experience on that one?
I couldn't win for losing out here, guys. So it was good, but I went into that trail wanting to do a speed record yo-yo. And so first 2 days I was putting down close to 40s, keeping a good pace. And it only took me about 120 miles and took me about 52 hours and 55 minutes. So it took me underneath 3 days in total, but it was starting, sleeping, starting, sleeping. So on the third morning when I was finishing, I woke up and I was choking on forest fires because all the smoke from Washington, all the smoke from California, it was getting stuck in these valleys. And it was to the point that the sun was like the red dot in the forest fire. Like it was unhealthy air to be breathing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, well, I got a couple more hours left. I'm going to finish this trail. But it quickly took my yo-yo out of the picture because like you could feel that particles going into your lungs and burning it.
Yeah.
And I'm a stubborn hiker, but not stubborn to the point of danger level. So I'm like, I can come back and yo-yo it. It's in my backyard. I can come back and yo-yo it. I still want to finish the through hike northbound. I can do this for a few more hours, but it was burning my lungs. And so not good luck with weather systems this year, but
sure.
or just in general. But
yeah.
But the trail itself, the most recent maps were from 2005, I believe, and it's amazing. This trail system actually has better signs on the ground than they do have virtual data. So like they had trail signs all throughout, but their GPX routes were kind of off. So it was still an adventure, still kind of figuring it out as you go. And you walk the Sea to Sky Highway a lot, which is a super dangerous road in British Columbia because the shoulder's like this wide and it's tucked in these mountains. For the most part, though, it was a cool trail. It was a few days, so you don't get the full trail vibe around it, but it was still nice to push the body and mind a little bit.
Did you add to the GPX data?
I did.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this one I was able to. And again, I rationalized I'm going to yo-yo it. So for like a road walk, not a road walk, but there's this one turn on the trail coming out of Squamish, and you go through not Indian, I'm sorry, that's the incorrect term. You go through Native American land, indigenous. It's different terms in America and Canada. I'm sorry. So you go through indigenous land, and around that turn, I don't think I recorded that part, but for the most part, I was able to add, excuse me, new data to that route.
Okay.
Good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was 2020.
Yeah.
Big year.
That was 2020.
Big extremes.
Yeah, and all of this was being coupled with moving countries as well. So 2020 was just a whirlwind of change, and it was a lot of juggling of multiple things. Running a business for the outdoors, moving countries, doing these trail systems, and breaking our bodies and minds over and over again. 2020 is exhausting. I am straight up exhausted just reliving these moments in my mind right now.
So let's look forward to this year then.
Yes.
For sure.
So we know 2021 will be a big year for you. Planning, if everything goes okay, will be an 8,000 miles year for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So at least the Florida Trail and then the North Country Trail with Magpie.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a bit more about the planning around that and when you want to start, when you finish, and
yeah. So Florida Trail, that'll be the first trail, and we can do it in winter months because it's Florida. So I'm gonna start that one on February 1st, and the planning around that, you don't need too many permits, especially when you're doing high mile days. You can actually walk through a lot of the places that you would need a camping permit if you're able to push miles through it. So permits weren't too hard for that. So the kind of concept around 2021, without giving too much away, is it's going to be the completion of kind of a goal that was found along the way as I was hiking, but a goal that kind of cemented itself a few years ago. So 2021, the completion will bring to finishing all 11 national scenic trails. And I think there's 2 other people right now who have done that. One is Nimble Will Nomad, and he's about 82. And then one is Andrew Skirka, and he's about 50 something. So we'll actually be able to become the first person underneath the age of 30 to be able to accomplish this. And granted, it's because so it's because we've revolved our life around trail, and we're happy, and we struggled and got to that point that we love to do that. Doesn't come without its sacrifices, but still there. So we'll be able to get to that point at the end of 2021. But I don't know how much we want to give away about the specifics of the trails. But yeah, we'll do Florida Trail first. We got 2 more trails after that. And then that'll bring us into the North Country Trail, where Magpie will be joining, and she'll actually be the first Canadian woman to through hike that trail as well. Because I believe there's 2 other women that have hiked that trail. The data around that trail also is it's growing as well. So I think there's 2 others, maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna have to double check that point, but yeah, we'll go into the NCT, and the NCT is about 4,600 miles long, biggest national scenic trail in the country. So we want to be able to go through that and, ironically, set a speed record on that. It's going to be a multiple month long speed record, but it should still be able to be a speed record because we're both comfortable with pushing high miles. And to complete that within the time frame of the other ones, we'll have to hold a 30 to 35 mile per day average. That would be good. That would be a really good pace to hold. But about 30 to 35 per day, including 0 days, near days, stuff like that.
Mm.
So that'll get us done in about 4 months. And then from there, we want to play around with the Southwest Trail that I guess that wasn't the kind of secret trail. It's the Hayduke Trail. We're thinking about doing the Hayduke Trail after that, and kind of cap the year off with, we're not going to try to push miles on that trail. We're going to try to cap the year off with just fully relaxing, doing a through hike, kind of how we want to do it. And most likely how we want to do it is still going to be quicker than normal, but we're not going to have to hold on to this like thought in our head of we have to do this, have to do this, have to do this. It's where the trail brings us, and it will be nice to have that trail transition us back into life off of trail after such a big year.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're definitely gonna hope for the best, good weather.
Thank you.
No physical pains and injuries. Well, there will always be some, of course, but nothing to the same extreme as that you had in 2020.
Yeah, well, we're taking steps not to have that. We've increased the weight in our pack with sandbags to like 80 pounds, so we're trying to break in our feet and shoulders a lot more than last year, so should help. Probably won't, but we'll be stubborn enough to get through it. We're stubborn hikers, so we'll be able to walk through it. Our mind's going to be there. We just need our body to start getting up to that point as well.
It's really exciting, and we are really excited to follow you through that whole journey as well, and see how you go this year.
I'm really excited about that too. That'll be fun having this back and forth and kind of seeing, you'll just see me just ragged and just beat down and be like, are those tears coming out? No, it's just very humid here in Florida. It's just very humid.
That's awesome. So thank you again for today. It was really nice to go through all these trails and the very interesting year of 2020. And
definitely hope for a much better 2021.
Well, in our minds, we rationalize it cannot statistically be the same as 2020.
True.
There's no way a storm cloud of that proportion or the wilderness of that proportion is going to hit us. It's not in the realm of possibility. We're hoping. We're really hoping.
No, definitely. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you as well.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
Thank you.
We're really looking forward to checking in with you a few days before you hit the trail. Really excited to hear more about your preparation, your mental state at that stage. So we'll be ready.
You'll see the same guy.
We'll be ready for a big year.
You'll see the same guy just bumbling a little more hyper energy, more just ready to get miles in. So that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be a really good talk. That'll be interesting to bounce ideas off of each other.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Then we'll wish you a good rest of the day.
Yeah, for you, the rest of the day. Yeah.
And a good night for you guys too.
Thank you very much.
Next time.
Yeah, until next time. Thank you guys. This has always been fun. I really appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. If you have an amazing story to share yourself, we would love to hear from you. Please reach out to us either via the comments below or reach us via contact@tellyourtrail.com. And we'll see you next time. Be adventurous.